When I first laid out a strategy for using bamboo to address the climate situation, I thought this is so obvious. I presented in Bangkok at a conference and I thought somebody's going to pick this up and run with it. 4 years later, nobody had done anything. And I just said, this is too important not to do it. It's a perpetual income machine for the communities. Every farmer could have some bamboo as part of their land holding for the windbreaks for the other crops. And, it creates a multi-generational asset and annual income. And, that's a pretty amazing combination.
Welcome to Richard Haas' channel, which looks at what we can do today to make Hawaii Island a more sustainable place to live, so our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren won't be priced out of here and will be able to stay in Hawaii and live good lives here. Today, we are talking to David Sands. David is an architect and an international leader in using bamboo as a building material. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Tell us how you first got interested in bamboo.
As a child growing up in Florida, we had a neighbor who had a bamboo clump grove that it's now over 120 years old. My friend's mother played in it when she was a child. And so we were always making like rafts out of it, and we were building forts and bridges and towers and all kinds of things. And then I went to college and I was studying art for the first couple of years, and my teacher was from China, and he invited some of his students to go to Taiwan. The main one wasn't open at that time, to study brush painting. And so I did that. And it turns out that the way you learn brush painting is you paint bamboo. Bamboo is considered the icon of the perfected human being. So it has that strength, flexibility, and inner emptiness, the Buddha nature.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And then I built a house, was living in Maui, and I think it was about 1990. I'm an architect, and my interest has been in sustainability. I worked for the state consultant for sustainability for the state of Virginia for a while. And so when I built the house, I was trying to be as sustainable as I could. It was completely off grid. One of the big hotels had remodeled, so I got all of these big, huge mahogany doors for practically nothing. And I think there were like 50 of them. They were all the walls, except for the sheer walls. But then they delivered the lumber to build the house. And I just thought, I can't be part of this anymore. It's like a whole forest had been cut just to build one house. And knowing that that's the case for every house in the United States, I need to figure out something different. The friend that was building the house with me, we decided to start building with bamboo.
And so that's the company Bamboo Living, right?
Yeah, exactly. Still doing design work, all of that.
So does that mean that on Maui, their building regulations do allow the use of bamboo for homes and such?
Well, what was interesting is they had a board of code appeal, which allowed us to get approval for individual projects based on data. So we got testing done at Washington State University and the University of Hawaii, and we were able to get approvals. But really, very quickly, we realized, well, if this was going to grow and turn into a business, we needed building code standards for the bamboo. So we started working with the people that write the building code, used through 90% of the US, including Hawaii, International Code Council. I got myself and the vice president of that International Code Council invited onto a committee that was working on building codes for around the globe on bamboo. So they were doing an international standards organization draft. Still took us, 7 years and about $500,000 out of pocket, but we were able to get a national building code standard for the bamboo.
So that applies here. That means people can build with bamboo here on this island as well.
Yeah, it's very specific though. It's the species that Bamboo Living uses it's a Southeast Asia bamboo. And then it's also taken through a specific process that's part of that approval. So it's not as simple as just going out and cutting bamboo here.
Yeah, David, I'm wondering how you see bamboo fitting on this island. Is it possible that we get a lot of small farmers doing this as compared to just one large organization?
Yeah, so our manufacturing expert who used to run the largest plywood mill in the world was hired to come look at the eucalyptus here. So he was really looking at the economics of having, an agricultural timber business here. He said that the bamboo would actually be a really good product for both the local market and for export. The way you do mills is you either have it depends on the capital expenditure available. You'll do a smaller mill that can be replicated. So you'll create multiple lines over time for expansion. So the plan right now is we're going to do a pilot mill in the Philippines. It's a high-speed mill. So right now it takes us about a week to process material. This will do it in less than a day. So, bamboo comes in and by the end of the day, it's plywood or beams or that sort of thing. And it's a continuous system. They're set up, the mills on the mainland this way, is they'll have a forest that's tied to the mill, but everybody in that region, they have a gate price where they can bring their logs to the mill and the mill will, purchase those logs and process them. So that's what I'm thinking. We could do something similar here to where the smallholder farmers can have like a windbreak of bamboo so they can do multiple crops on the same property. And then that bamboo gets harvested every year and creates income for the farmer family.
So does that mean that the code you mentioned would have to be amended for people to be allowed to use our local bamboo?
It's not changing it, it's creating a new one. Each time you do a new product, you've got to create a new code or new standard that goes with that. Yeah.
Which department is this a county you will go to or a state?
No, it's national. So it's the same folks, the ICC, International Code Council.
Oh, and then they pass it back down and the county will use that.
Exactly. Once that report is published, then materials that are manufactured under that report are approved for construction wherever that code applies.
When we took a tour of my farm, there was a discussion, with the Hilo Bamboo Hui. They were talking about a pilot project as well.
Right.
Is that after you do your pilot project, or what is your thought as far as that?
No, it's actually the same. I think the one piece we need now is kind of an inventory of the available bamboo in the islands, because you need feedstock to run a mill, and we just have to make sure that there's an adequate supply that would really make this work.
So you are talking about putting together a production facility to do what exactly?
Yeah, so it actually makes laminated bamboo veneer lumber and plywood.
And so where are you in that process? Well, you said you need an inventory of available product. What else is going on with that?
Sure. So we're going to do a pilot mill in the Philippines.
That pilot project you're doing in the Philippines is something that you might later bring here. Is that the idea?
Exactly. We'll get the details of the mill figured out there and then replicate here.
As it starts to move forward, we'll need to get planting material. So we'll have to determine the species, yeah?
Exactly.
And when do we start doing that?
Yeah, that's part of what I think the conversations were around the bamboo hui, was finding, some funding to put together a study of, what species are available, which ones are going to do the best for making the materials. Each time you add a species, it adds complexity to the testing. The fact that they're composite materials makes it a little bit simpler. And we want to do a few species at least, just for, reduce risk in terms of any kind of like gregarious flowering or things like that.
If something like this gets started, I can imagine that there would be entrepreneurs that would do all kinds of different things with the bamboo itself. So there will be a tremendous economic impact besides just growing it for lumber. I mean, there's so many different things that people do all over the world with it, yeah?
Sure, that's so true. And actually, it's actually a superfood. So it's got all the essential amino acids plus high antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. And so being able to process it for supplements, for protein powders, things like that, and then all kinds of crafts. And like you said, I mean, they call it the plant of 1,000 uses. So yeah, I could see exactly what you're saying, is that lots of opportunities would pop up as the supply built.
Yeah.
That could make a difference economically on the island if this really got going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what our manufacturing expert said. He felt like it was a real opportunity. When I looked at the numbers, it could be our largest export from the islands in terms of scaling this. And I think it was just conversion, about 14, 15% of the old sugarcane pineapple land would get us to carbon neutrality for the state, because it's so fast growing. It's just wild.
That's an amazing statistic.
Yeah, yeah. And then what you do with the material is you're basically harvesting every year, and the way you store the carbon is making building materials. So the buildings become the storage mechanism for the atmospheric carbon, instead of right now, like when you cut a tree, you kill it. So basically you've got the problem of, every time you harvest trees, you're knocking the sequestration level of that land back to near zero. And with the bamboo, that's not the case. You're keeping it at a very high rate because you're harvesting every year, and it's the fastest growing woody plant on the planet.
Right, because it's never going to stop. It's like cockroaches.
Yeah, yeah. But it's non-invasive. So we only use the non-invasive clumping bamboos.
I have the running bamboo problem at my house, and I'm disappointed that you don't want my bamboo.
Yeah.
Do you see a way where a farmer could utilize the bamboo that they grow in such a way that it would lower their cost of building farm and equipment buildings using old technology maybe?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's a friend on Maui who actually does that. They build agriculture buildings around the island, and anybody could do that. They could grow the bamboo if they treat it properly. You have to treat the bamboo, but then you can actually build your own structures with it.
How long does bamboo last?
Treated bamboo in well-designed buildings indefinitely. Elements that deteriorated are just like wood, sun and weather. In fact, the fellow that got me inspired about it, he basically said bamboo needs boots and a hat, just like wood. So if you design properly, those buildings will be, around for way longer than us. We've had our buildings go through multiple Category 5 hurricanes, winds up to 200 miles per hour. And then, of course, the multiple earthquakes that we've had here, up to 6.9. So it's just a phenomenally strong material. Higher strength to weight, actually, than steel. Somewhat higher compression strength of concrete, but a fraction of the weight of concrete.
Somebody asked me this question. Have you used bamboo for fishing poles? And, that's what it used to be before. And he said, have you ever seen a bamboo pole that was broken? And I don't remember one.
That's a really good point. It's incredibly strong in that way. It bends, but it doesn't break.
When this subject came up and we started to look into the characteristics of the bamboo plant, it's not very deep rooted. And what we have on the Hamakua coast between Wailuku River and Hakalau, we have at least 16 perpetual streams, because the northeast trades come in, the water goes down through the rocks, and it pops out. And we had a podcast with John Cross, he was with Sea Brewer, and he said, the soil on this side is made from volcanic ash. He said, so if there was any rocks in the soil, it was brought in by man. When you think about it and you understand that there's so much rain and it drains so well and it's shallow rooted, and there's perpetual water here. No wonder it grows crazy. I mean, you see it growing all over the place. Yeah, I mean, other islands. But this particular location, I'm thinking farmers could do pretty well, it would seem to me.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing with the bamboo is because it doesn't have a taproot, it's this rhizome mat that catches a lot of the rain that comes. So you actually increase your percolation and strengthen the aquifer by planting the bamboo as well.
A lot of benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, there really are. And then it's 10 to 15 times faster than trees. So 1 acre of the giant timber bamboo can produce as much building material as 10 acres of Douglas fir trees. And with the southern pine, it's more than 15 times. So 1 acre of bamboo will produce more than 15 acres of southern pine.
Amazing. This subject comes home, especially because we had a podcast with Paul Brubaker and Patrick Sullivan, and they were telling us that things are not going so well here in the islands relative to the US mainland. And we need to do something. And what that something is not very obvious. But it appears to me that this bamboo is a replacement that would be perpetual. We could be produced here forever.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. Yeah.
Kind of seems like a no-brainer.
Right, right.
Driving nuts. Yeah, really.
Yeah, yeah. That's when I first laid out a strategy for using bamboo to address the climate situation. I thought this is so obvious. I presented in Bangkok at a conference, and I thought somebody's going to pick this up and run with it. 4 years later, nobody had done anything. And I just said, this is too important not to do it. So that's why I started the company Rhizome that's doing all the work in the Philippines. Like you said, it's a perpetual income machine for the communities. Every farmer could have some bamboo as part of their land holding. You use it for the windbreaks for the other crops. And, it creates a multi-generational asset and annual income. And, that's a pretty amazing combination. And you plant once and, the 3 generations will be harvesting that.
And one of the most important things that we have to solve here in Hawaii is how are we going to produce our food? Because we import about 80-something% of it. And it really has to do with the farmers. If the farmers make money, the farmers will farm.
Yeah.
So if bamboo can help them make money, now we can be talking about food security at the same time. And not to mention climate and all these other benefits.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We got to get this done, David.
Yeah, we do. We do. I'm excited about getting a Big Island project up and running. And we just found out like a week or so ago that we're going to get an award from the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C. in end of October for our combination of climate work and community development and reforestation. So I've got my hands full, but this is too important not to get this thing done. Just like you said, Richard, needs to be done.
Yeah, and our property out there in Pepeikeo, we designated 172 acres to a modern day ahupua. So any way that we can work with this idea of a pilot project, we'd be more than happy to get something going.
I think is having some test plots would be a great first step with, several different species. One of our local partners in the Philippines is the former Secretary of Agriculture for the Philippines. Mm-hmm. He's been studying regenerative ag for the last 15 years. So we're able to do all our nursery production and plant outs with no chemical fertilizers at all. It's all done with, compost and fungal and bacterial inoculants that really stimulate the growth hormones and the performance of the plants. We're seeing in 15 months plants that can get 35 feet tall. So it's a phenomenal thing.
Oh boy, we got to get going.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. This is really exciting, David.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, David, for joining us. It will be really interesting to see what happens with this here on the Big Island. And I want to thank everyone for watching. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Richard Hawes Vlog. Mahalo for watching and ahui ho.
Ahui ho. Thank you. Yeah.